35% of people in rich countries miss their daily vitamin D. Old Nordic grandmas beat this by eating salty fish every morning. Why fish first, not porridge? What's hiding in that one bite? Why did no one swap it out for jam or fruit? If breakfast could change your winter, would you try the weirdest thing on the table? So why did those Scandinavian grandmas eat salty fish at sunrise just to make it through the snow? You ever wonder why no one tried to swap out that salty fish for something sweeter? Back then, they didn't even have options. Meat was rare, fresh veggies disappeared in winter, and if you skipped the fish, your body felt it. Kids who ate the herring grew up tougher and missed fewer days working in the snow or at school. Plus, pickled fish meant no last-minute panic about what was safe to eat. Can you imagine having just one food to keep you steady all winter? That's a different kind of security than a packed fridge. In Stockholm, January mornings dip to -1 degree Celsius. Norway, even colder. Imagine waking up before sunrise, the floor's freezing, sky's black, and your whole breakfast is just salty fish on tough brown bread. You'd ask, why this? Not even a big plate, just a few bites. The answer is herring. For hundreds of years, that fish has fed the North. Not a trend, just what keeps people alive. One expert even called herring one of the most essential basic foods in Nordic history. That's not hype. This fish is packed. 100 grams gives you around 16 micrograms of vitamin D, more than most fish out there. You also get 2,300 milligrams of omega-3s. Modern folks talk about labels and health claims, but back then, nobody even knew the numbers. Here's the trick. Sunlight disappears in these winters. Less sun means way less vitamin D. Same problem today. Most people still fall short. When your levels drop, your bones weaken, mood tanks. Grandmas didn't know the science, but they saw what happened. Families who ate this fish got sick less in winter. That was all they needed. There's another angle, pickled herring. It lasts forever because salt and acid keep it safe. Old books describe barrels of herring traveling all across Europe, staying good for months. Every time someone ate it on rye bread, they were eating stored light, stored fat, stored safety. One bite, and you're covered for the dark season. Now, look at breakfast today. A slice of white bread, sweet jam, coffee, crash. Compare that to salty, fatty fish helping people stand in the freezing wind for hours. Ever wonder what your breakfast is really doing for you? And salty fish was just the beginning. The next trick was even plainer, but somehow kept the whole family running. And how did one bowl of hot grain keep a whole family warm when the heater and money both ran low? Most people didn't get to choose between cereal and toast. Grain was the only option that made sense. You could stretch it to feed a big family, and nothing went stale if you kept it dry. That hot bowl meant less fighting over scraps, and even the smell made people feel safe. Some mornings, the only thing between a hungry kid and a long walk to school was porridge. It's wild how something that plain can make or break a day. Here's a real one. 100 grams of dry oats gives 380 calories, 66 grams of carbs, 17 grams protein, and over 10 grams fiber, all from a plain scoop. Picture a pot on the stove, window fogged up from steam, everyone getting a bowl. It looks boring, but it packs energy that doesn't run out fast. Oats, barley, and rye are at the heart of Nordic breakfasts, and they're still everywhere in diet guides. These grains work for a reason. Wheat doesn't grow well in cold, wet places, but oats and barley are tough. Rye roots go deep and survive short, cold summers. That's why they show up over and over. Grain is a money saver. Meat goes bad, bread goes stale, but a sack of oats or barley stays good for months. Pour it in a pot, heat the room, fill everyone's belly, and keep the fridge stash for later. Researchers found something wild. Men who ate more rye bread lived longer. In Denmark, people who followed the Nordic Food Index, meaning they ate these foods, had way lower death rates, all from a brown mushy bowl that costs next to nothing. In 1900, A kid eating porridge before a cold walk to school isn't just getting warm. That bowl stretches the family's food for another day, keeps them full, and actually guards long-term health. No magic, just steady, quiet power. So think about what happens if breakfast is just sugar and air in a flashy box. The old school magic, that came from jars hidden underground. What were they really doing with all that dried fish, rye bread, and buried jars in the yard? Imagine going to the cellar and knowing, just by looking, how many weeks you could last without stores or neighbors helping out. That backup food was worth more than money. Every jar and loaf was a little piece of freedom, a way to say, we're okay even if the roads close. And everyone, from the youngest to the oldest, learned which jars to use first and which ones to save. This wasn't just about survival, it was a system for beating the cold together. In every cold house, there's a cellar packed with dried fish, dark loaves, and jars. Looks like clutter. But each thing is just a breakfast already solved, waiting for you weeks later. That's how people survived winters that never seemed to end. Pickled herring wasn't just a taste, it was a backup plan for months. Salt in barrels meant you could eat fish long after summer. No sea nearby? Doesn't matter. You get your ocean from a barrel in the middle of winter. Bread had a trick too. Rugbread, that dense Danish rye, doesn't go stale fast because of sourdough and moisture. When it does harden, you never throw it out. Old rye gets soaked and turned into something warm again. Ulebrud, that's 2 meals from 1 loaf. That kind of stretch is how you stay calm during a brutal winter. Same deal with grain. Dry equals dependable. Root cellars kept veggies, cabbages, and jars safe without electricity. The ground did the work, keeping temperatures cool and steady so nothing spoiled. Then there's fermented milk. It sounds weird, but filmjölk, the thick, sour Swedish drink, kept for up to 2 weeks in a cold place. People ate it with bread or oats, and the sour meant it was still safe. A cellar full of jars and dried food is really a time machine. Summer and autumn locked away for February. But to make it work, every bite has to stretch. Winter would always last longer than you hoped, so every breakfast was rationed, never wasted. And even with all that stored food, people still needed new ways to make each meal last. When you hear how they stretched one tiny breakfast through weeks of dark, doesn't your own fridge feel risky? Back then, running out of food wasn't just a hassle, it was dangerous. Kids learned to cut bread so thin you could almost see through it, and no one complained about leftovers. Even the scraps at the bottom of the jar or pot had a use. If you wasted food, everyone noticed. Today, throwing away a heel of bread means nothing, but in those winters, it could decide whether you went hungry before spring. Bread cut thin, leftovers fried into cakes, a spoonful of fish stretched across slices, every move about making food last. Imagine snow outside for months, stores far away, and whatever's in your kitchen has to last until the next chance to buy more. Nothing gets tossed. Old bread is toasted, soaked, or turned into soup. Leftover porridge? Mix it with fat, fry it, and call it tomorrow's meal. Even cured fish isn't handed out whole, it's chopped and spread out. Everything is about how do we make this last another day. Modern health studies show eating enough whole grains matters. If you eat less than 140 to 160 grams of whole grains daily, your risks for heart disease, stroke, and diabetes go up. Suddenly, that old cheap food isn't so poor after all. It's a lifesaver. Denmark doubled its whole grain intake in a decade, up to 82 grams a day. Now, they have some of the lowest obesity rates in Europe. Changing food habits made a real difference for a whole country. No health campaigns back then, just the cold field and a rule. Nothing wasted if it could feed a kid tomorrow. That's why breakfast wasn't one day's portion. It was 2 days stretched, fish as a topping, not a main. You learn fast when winter doesn't quit. Open your fridge. How long could your food last? For most, a storm or a paycheck delay means cupboards go empty fast. Does that feel safe, or does it feel like luck? When you have to trust your food, the so-called weird choices suddenly start making sense. That's when sour and smoky start to feel safer than soft and sweet. Why did they trust sour milk, old oats, and smoked fish more than fresh, soft food from the shiny store? People knew from experience, foods that stayed safe longest got picked first. Fresh, soft bread or milk spoiled fast and caused stomach problems, but sour milk and smoked fish were like nature's built-in protection. Kids grew up knowing which foods made them feel strong all day. If you trusted only the soft, fresh stuff, you'd run out quickly and get sick more. Even guests could tell by the smells which houses knew how to handle a real winter. Fermented milk smells sour, smoked fish smells strong. For most people, that means toss it out. But in a Nordic kitchen, those smells mean safe to eat. Sour milk and smoked fish are what kept families from getting sick. Drinks like filmjölk in Sweden and viili in Finland are made by letting bacteria turn milk thick and tangy. These friendly bacteria eat the sugar in milk, so even people who can't drink fresh milk often have no trouble with these. Scientists say fermented milk has shaped the Nordic diet for thousands of years. Why eat it for breakfast? It keeps longer, blocks bad germs, and the sourness means fewer stomach bugs. Before fridges, a few safe days could mean the difference between a healthy week and a sick house. Smoked fish works because smoke dries out the meat and adds natural chemicals that keep bacteria away. Salt pulls out water, making it even harder for germs to grow. That's why strong fish smells show up in places where winter lasts forever. Herring still leads the charts for omega-3s, 2.4 grams per 100 grams, helping your heart and brain even today. But too much salt is risky. Health groups now say high sodium leads to about 1.9 million deaths every year from heart trouble and strokes. The old-timers got around that by eating salty fish with piles of grains and low-fat dairy keeps the pressure down. Modern writers say sour milk is everywhere up north, but drinking too much milk without moving much can cause weight gain. Power comes from the pattern, not any one magic food. So if a grandma pours sour milk over oats and adds smoked fish, she's making breakfast that looks rough but stays safe, filling, and steady. When doctors were far away and winter kept pressing in, one quiet rule tied it all together and made the difference. What quiet breakfast rule did every Nordic grandma follow so kids didn't get sick when doctors were far away? It's funny because nobody called it nutrition or worried about vitamins. They just saw who bounced back from colds, who grew taller, who finished their chores with energy left. If the meal hit all three spots, grain, dairy, sea, it worked. If not, someone always struggled. The old plates weren't perfect, but they got people through more storms than fancy recipes ever could. Even when doctors were a day's ride away, kids grew up strong just by following this quiet rule. A chunk of rye bread, a little butter or cheese, some fish or egg, a bowl of porridge with sour milk. No charts, no labels, but it's the same three food groups modern experts still recommend: whole grains, low-fat dairy, and fish on one plate. Doctors say this mix drops your risk of heart problems and early death if you keep at it for years. One big Danish study found each step higher on the Nordic food score dropped risk by about 4%. Oddly, rye bread made the biggest difference for men. Sometimes the plainest foods do the heavy lifting. Grandmas saw the proof with their own eyes. Kids who had just bread or just sugar in the morning faded out, got cold, and got sick more. Kids with grain, fat, and protein made it to school and got their chores done. The difference showed up in real life, not on a label. Research agrees. More whole grains means lower rates of diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. Fiber feeds good bacteria in your gut, slows sugar spikes, and helps you stay full longer. No crazy hunger swings or crashes. Their quiet rule: something from the field, something from the cow, something from the sea. Grain for energy, dairy for bones and fat, fish or eggs for protein and sharp brains. Stack that against a modern breakfast: sugary drinks, white pastries, maybe a slice of fake meat. The old plate is still winning. That same pattern ended up as a school plan, and it changed a lot of lives. And when you see how these winter plates shape their whole lives, doesn't it feel bigger than just food? Most folks didn't even realize how much that food pattern shaped the way they saw the world. Knowing there was always a meal ready made people act bolder, plan bigger, and care for each other more. That same feeling shows up today. Places with reliable food traditions have fewer worries, even in tough times. Every winter plate wasn't just about calories. It was about knowing you could handle whatever came through the door, together or alone. People now talk about diets, but for these grandmas, it was just the way to stay alive. A review of 47 studies shows people eating the classic Nordic way have a 22% lower risk of dying early, 16% lower from heart disease, 14% lower from cancer. That's from cold, dark places. Real results, not marketing. It's not just about calories. This pattern is built on rye, oats, barley, root veggies, berries, low-fat dairy, and fatty fish. Harvard calls it a backbone of whole grain cereals and fatty fish. Old habits, new proof. Science finally caught up to what hardship taught first. A grandma who adds one more scoop of oats can't see risk charts, but she notices when her husband comes back from work steadier and her kids miss fewer days from sickness. That's proof you can use. Food safety means less fear. When a family knows tomorrow's meal is waiting, they act differently. Norway's Oslo breakfast in the 1930s gave kids bread, milk, and fruit at school. Health workers said it changed more than hunger. It showed Norway cared about strong, equal kids. Big change, small meal. Winter breakfasts did the same for families. You have enough for today, face the storm, come home to warmth. The Nordic diet is no trend. It's a morning habit that chased fear away. Makes you wonder, what would happen if you copied just one piece? So what happens if you steal one of their snow day breakfast tricks and your body suddenly feels built for storms? Here's what's real. In rich countries, most people miss basic vitamin D and fiber targets. Almost 90% don't hit the 30-gram fiber mark. Most grains eaten are just white flour and processed junk, not dense, chewy whole grain. There's a big gap, but you can close it with a few swaps. Bread is the first step. Pick the darkest, heaviest rye you can find. Denmark pushed a whole grain label and doubled their average intake to 82 grams a day. More than half the country now gets enough. You don't need a label, just check the ingredients and go dark. Fish is next. Try fatty fish 2 times a week. Herring is loaded with omega-3s, 1.7 to 1.8 grams per 100 grams. Even a small habit matches what grandmas did. Let the sea help you through winter. And the hot pot? Bring it back. 1 scoop of oats, water or milk, maybe some berries or yogurt on top. Fills you up, keeps your energy steady, no crash. Don't call it a diet. Think of it as a tiny test. Try just one change for a week. Watch what happens. Do you skip that mid-morning crash? Stay more focused? Handle the cold better? If a plate of salty fish and a bowl of grain helped grandmas keep families moving through months of darkness, just imagine what even one bite of that old winter armor could do for you tomorrow. If any of these winter foods shocked you, share your wildest breakfast in the comments. And if you're ready to unlock more food secrets, tap the next story right now. Don't miss what's coming.